Hello, how you doing? And welcome back to the channel. What an ending. Argentina against Australia in the Rugby Championship. I feel like it's taken me a few minutes just to recollect myself after what was a pretty blockbuster final 10 minutes of the game. I didn't think it was that great beforehand, but I'll get into all of that and much, much more in the video, looking back on the game, looking at the result and what it means for both of these teams. Australia, for the start of Eddie Jones's second tenure in charge, lose their opening two games, and Argentina, once again, a reminder, I think, that they can spring a surprise on anyone. They have plenty of quality in that team. So make sure you drop a comment down below, give me your thoughts on this game and on these two teams at this moment in time. And also, if you can like the video, it just helps give it a little boost so as many people see it as possible. And don't forget to hit subscribe on the channel as well. But let's get into it. So a last-minute Argentinian try that was converted means the final score, Australia 31, Argentina 34. And the final 10 minutes of this game were absolutely blockbuster. In all honesty, I thought the kind of 65-ish minutes before the last section of the game actually weren't that great. I was kind of making my notes as I was going along, and I felt like it was two teams that were maybe struggling to find an identity at this moment in time and weren't quite clicking. And I think that's probably still true. I don't think we should lose sight of that just because the end of the game was so good. But after Argentina scored a try on 68 minutes, which gave them a 10-point cushion, 17-27 at that stage in the game, it then was just absolutely blockbuster. Australia scoring two tries quickly, and then Argentina coming back right at the end of the game to snatch victory. And as I said in the intro, I was kind of there, I think because of that, because it was a game that was so exciting at the end and such a dramatic finish, I'm kind of struggling to make sense of it all in a little bit. I guess if we look back at the start of the game and we go chronologically, Australia leap out to a 10-0 lead, and I was there thinking, all right, this looks a little bit more like what I probably expected Eddie Jones's Wallabies team to look like. There was a few good moments with Mark Nwanganita-Wase, I hope I'm saying that right, and we're going to come back to him with his intercept. But him taking a quick tap penalty, Australia injecting a bit of pace into the game, getting themselves on the scoreboard. And also I thought we saw a bit more of the power game, which I really expected to see with Eddie Jones in charge. The driving maul looked pretty good. Will Skelton had some pretty good early involvements. So that was my early impressions of the game. But after that point, I thought Argentina for most of the match from that point on were the better side. I know it was close in the end, but yeah, that was my kind of gut instinct watching it. And I guess it leads us on nicely to maybe the first kind of major point to talk about, which is just the Argentinian spirit, which we know they have in spades. It's almost a bit of a cliche when talking about Argentinian sport and the passion and emotion and all that sort of stuff. But I think we saw it in this game, because if you think about it, they went 10-0 down and they had the spirit and the quality to grind their way back into the game. And then they also had the spirit to win the game late on, having looked like they were on for the victory. When you're winning by 10 points with about 10 minutes remaining, you're in an excellent position to throw that away or lose that position, all the momentum switch round, but still be able to go back up the pitch and get another try to win the game. Shows that Argentinian spirit. And I think is a bit of a reflection about Argentina at the moment, because you don't quite know what you're going to get from them. And I can't quite work out whether they are a really good side or a team that are just a little bit hit and miss, because I was at Twickenham last year when they beat England at the start of the autumn. I was then in Cardiff a week later when they were pretty disappointing in losing to a poor Wales team. We've seen them win away to New Zealand. They've now got another victory away to Australia. Consistency is always going to be the issue with them, but I can't quite work out with Argentina whether they are like the Argentinian teams of 2007 and 2015 when they've been a real threat at the World Cup, or whether they're closer to, say, the 2019 vintage, who weren't quite as good as that. And I'm still not quite sure. I think on their day, they have the potential and the game and the player quality, and also the coach with Michael Cheika in charge, to trouble anyone. Are they consistent enough? Do they have enough depth in that team? I still think there are question marks over Argentina, but I give them a huge amount of credit for the way in which they won this game. And it's actually the same question that I could pose to Australia. I wrote down here, how good are both of these sides? I've just mentioned Argentina, but what about the Wallabies? Because I'll be honest, I was expecting more from the start of Eddie Jones's tenure. And to have lost the opening two games is one thing. I think the manner in which they've lost them will be more concerning, because they got blown away against the Springboks. Okay, in Pretoria, at altitude, a really tough place to go. You say, all right, well, let's see how they do against Argentina. And as I say, I thought for a big chunk of the game, they were the second best team in it. I know the final scoreline was close. And if I'm talking about the spirit for Argentina to win the game, I'll also give credit to the Australians for the spirit to come back into the game, because with 10 minutes to go, I was thinking, well, the game's dead here. And then they somehow were able to turn it on its head. And Mark Nawaqanitawase, I mentioned him earlier. I thought he was excellent. I thought he was excellent throughout. And that moment where he intercepted it about 5 metres from his own try line to dab down under the post and get the try which gave Australia that late lead was exceptional, was excellent. And he is one of those guys that you look in that Wallabies team and you think there's something to grab hold of there. Will Skelton and more of his inclusion, another one. They've got other good players in there. But I was just expecting more from the start of Eddie Jones's tenure. I didn't think there'd be world beaters straight away. And you could see the pictures that I was watching showed him in the coaching box in the second half of that game, really frustrated at times. I think he is probably frustrated that it's not quite happening in the way that he would have wanted it to. So we'll give them more time. You're only 2 games in, and we know that Eddie Jones is a very experienced, very good coach. But I've been a little underwhelmed from what I've seen of the Wallabies so far. And I think there's probably 2 examples, actually, that I can give for that. And let's start with the attack from Australia, because it was something towards the end of his reign with England really recently, where all the fans were just saying England's attack has nothing. It can't land any shots. And I know Australia actually were probably better than England have been recently, because they did score tries in this game. But at 67 minutes, they flashed up the statistic on the screen that in terms of the amount of attack that Australia had gone through 7+ phases at that point in the game, at 67 minutes, they'd only done it once, compared with 6 times for Argentina. And it did just feel a little bit static, a little bit underwhelming again, if I go back to that word. You weren't quite sure exactly what they were doing in attack. And then the other thing I think you can point out is the discipline. Because actually, if we look at Argentina winning that game, and as much as we give them credit for staying in it and having the fight and having the execution late on, Australia gave away a pretty soft penalty, really, to give Argentina the opportunity to kick to the corner and get the line out. So those are 2 areas that I think you can look at in particular where Australia at the moment are underwhelming. So that's kind of my general thoughts on the game. Another point I wanted to mention is when watching this, and again, it's where the final 10 minutes has probably skewed my view on the game almost, because it was such an exciting finish. I feel like I'm being quite negative, and I also think now Argentina will feel in a pretty good position and Australia will be really down in the dumps. It's amazing how that late swing in a game can impact so much how you view a team. But one of the takeaways I actually had when watching this game, and I wrote it down, was these 2 sides are in pretty similar positions. I've kind of touched on it already in saying how good are either of them, but they've both got moments of quality. We saw that today. They've got some really nice elements to their game and some really good players, but they've also guilty of coughing up the ball. I thought it was a stark contrast actually to the All Blacks Springbok game earlier, just in terms of the continuity of the game, the quality, the flow of the game. It was stop-start, and I think it was a reflection of where these 2 sides are at the moment. And a really good example of that was, it was towards the end of the first half. It's probably a moment that most people would have forgotten by now. I'm probably only remembering it because I made a note of it. But Australia had a driving maul. I think it was in the Argentinian 22. And it was just messy. Argentina are doing a pretty good job of disrupting the maul. And Nick White just needs to get the ball out of there. And he doesn't. It goes to ground. It's turnover ball. And it was things like that for both of these sides that just left me frustrated, actually, for quite a lot of the game. Had a lot less momentum in the match than the one earlier, as you would expect. But that is also kind of, I think, symptomatic of where Argentina and Australia are. And whilst the feelings in the 2 camps are going to be very, very different, I think there actually are some similarities, and that neither of them right now at this moment in time are in the best position, but we'll see if they are able to get there. Also, Carter Gordon, just want to mention him, came off the bench early in the game. Len Ikitau, they were saying, has been taken to hospital with what looked like a shoulder injury. Hope it's not too bad. Carter Gordon, I thought, looked pretty good again. And Marky Mark, as they like to call him, Mark Nawaqanitawase, I think looks really good. He impressed in the autumn. He was the top try scorer when they came over here at the end of last year. Had a really good Super Rugby. Looked good again. His international debut on Australian soil. And that intercept was just a brilliant moment. You could feel the atmosphere in that stadium when that happened. But it wasn't to be for Australia. So Yeah, I said before the game it was going to be an intriguing one because they were two sides not in great form and not in a great place. And I think it kind of proved to be that way. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you kind of agree with my general assessment? I didn't think it was a great game, but the final 10 minutes was super, super exciting. And what about where these two teams are at the moment? I think there are still plenty of questions, obviously for Australia to answer, but for Argentina as well. I think one result, can they back it up? Can they do it consistently? Can they really cause a problem to the Springboks next week? That's what I want to see from them. If we are to see them be like the Argentinian teams in the past that have gone deep at World Cups and been really, really threatening and very entertaining at World Cups. We shall wait and see. What a great Saturday of the Rugby Championship though. Two decent games, plenty more videos coming up over the next week or so as well on the channel. So do make sure you are subscribed, like the video, drop a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.